Hello, everyone. It's your host, Amanda Eke, and I have some amazing news. Starting this fall, The Poet Speaks is coming to your TV screens. Yes, that's right. After 8 amazing seasons as a podcast, The Poet Speaks with Amanda Eke is now a TV show, airing on the Archaeology channel's new streaming service, Heritage. Everyone get ready for a visual feast of spoken word performances and deep dives into the minds of poets from all over the world. Now, something extraordinary is coming, and you won't want to miss a single moment. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Poet Speaks podcast. Now, our next guest is a queer Afro-Dominican poet raised in Harlem and the South Bronx, a 2022 Langston Hughes Fellow at the Palm Beach Poetry Festival, and an alum of the Tin House Winter Workshop. His work has received the Leslie McGrath Poetry Prize in 2023, the Pacific Spirit Poetry Prize in 2021, was a finalist for the 2022 Mississippi Review Poetry Prize. Everyone, welcome to the Poet Speaks podcast, Miguel Martin Perez. Miguel, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. How's it feel when you hear all your accomplishments just like out loud like that? You blush a little bit?
Yeah. I have mixed feelings. like I'm still fledgling. I'm still. I feel like I'm at the beginning of my career, so it's almost surreal to think that I've done some things already. But I don't know. It's I don't know. It's kind of embarrassing almost. I like to just hear it all spelled out.
Yeah. That whole thing, you feel like you're fledgling. Even with your success, you still feel like you're fledgling at the beginning of a career. That's an interesting kind of place to be when you've accomplished a lot, but you still feel like you're fledgling.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, what's nice is that over the course of like the years that I've been focused on poetry, I've met a lot of people, like a lot of people. Like I've met, you know, peers that are like around the same stage that I'm at, and professors who've, had 4, 5, 6, 7 books under their belt. I've met some legends that are just like, the best of the best. And so, sometimes you can't help but compare, but at the same time, it's like, this is the beginning. I reserve the right to be a little bit humble and, hold on to hope that, I have potential, I have room to grow, I can accomplish bigger things later.
Absolutely. Respect. All right, now tell us a little bit about where you at, where you located in the world right now. I think a little bit from your accent, but you tell us where you currently at in the world right now.
So I just moved back from California just like a couple of months ago. I'm back home in the Bronx. Staying with family, catching up with friends. Yeah, I'm back in my hometown. My hometown. This is where I grew up. This is where I was raised. And the MFA pulled me out to California for a couple of years, and I stayed 3 more after that. So I had my a nice little stint out west.
Yeah, from West Coast to East Coast. Tell us a bit. Were you born and raised, bred in the Bronx, correct?
Born in Inwood, like I was born at the Allen Pavilion Hospital, like the top of Manhattan. Um, until age 6, I grew up in Harlem on like 140th in Amsterdam. And then around age 6, once my mom was a single mom, we moved out to the South Bronx. So I've lived here since I was 6 years old in the year 2000.
Wow. Tell us, what was that like growing up? So that would be, you grew up in the 90s, would that be correct? Somewhere around there, early
Yeah,
2000s?
born 94.
What
Exactly.
what was that kind of like growing up in that area in the Bronx, that New York City sense of mind? I think a lot of people that are not born and raised there, we all have our different kind of ideas of what being a kid in New York City is like. There's a show I
Right.
used to watch called Hey Arnold.
Oh yeah.
In my mind, the schools would be like PS 18. It never says it in the show, but I believe that it grew up around New York City, right?
Yeah,
Tell us, what
for
was it
sure.
like being a kid growing up in a city like that?
I there's so much to say. I You learn a lot of things quickly. Um, you know, once you're in like middle school, you're already expected to take the trains and the buses on your own.
Yeah.
You know, you learn how to navigate streets. You learn what the dangers are very early. Um, you know, to stay away from strangers. You learn to keep your distance. Don't make eye contact. There's a lot that is spoken and unspoken. You learn very quickly to be careful. It's a big place and it's easy to get lost. Um, but you know, at the same time, you know, it's such a it's such a big city that there are so many people. You meet all kinds of people, no matter what school you go to, what like extracurriculars you do.
Mm.
Um, you know, you are exposed to diversity from the jump. Um, so I think that's kind of like the root of this idea that New Yorkers like have seen it all or like nothing phases them. Like I've seen a lot of clips online of like New Yorkers not reacting or looking at something, uh, you know, otherwise extraordinary happening on the subway.
Mm.
So yeah, it's great. It's great. You learn a lot. You get exposed to a lot, and over time you get used to a lot. Maybe get a little bit jaded, but you know,
Yeah.
I don't regret it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Now, so I do want to get to later this kind of point of that perspective to the West Coast, especially because I know you went to UC Riverside, and I'm very well familiar with that school. But we'll get to that a little bit later. When did you discover poetry? Was it during your childhood in the city in the Bronx? Like you said, that New York, you learn a lot at such a small, young age. Did you discover writing at that point when you were learning so much at such a young age, or did poetry find you later in your career, in your life?
I Poetry like really got me when I was in high school. You know, the unfortunate thing about the educational system, you know, then when I was coming up through the ranks and still to this day is that poetry is kind of a mini section. Like that's probably a day or two in a given like English course. Um so you know, there were moments and I still remember these moments, you know, maybe like second grade, fifth grade, seventh grade, where there was a poetry section and I was really excited just to like have something creative to do in class and you know reading something that was different from all of the short stories, different from the you know the plays that we read, etc. But it wasn't until high school, like it wasn't until I was a freshman in high school where I started taking up journaling seriously.
Mm.
And basically what happened is that over time I was just like journaling every single day, just like writing everything that I did throughout the day. Um, and day after day got more detailed. I started describing not just what I did that day, but I was talking about like the facial expressions in my friend's face when they told me this and that. I started describing what passersby were wearing. Like I was becoming really detailed, like borderline obsessive with my journal entries. I wanted it to be as descriptive as possible. And then that became a problem because it caused insomnia. Like I was recounting my day into the night. Um, and so poetry just kind of happened from there. I found shortcuts. I found ways of describing emotions in detail that didn't need all that detail. I took it upon myself to learn new words so that I didn't have to like use a sentence to describe something. I could just use that one word, and so you know, my writing ballooned, and then poetry allowed it to become more condensed. And I just stuck to it from there. I never got bored. I just kept writing poems about whatever I felt like.
Wow, wow. You know, and the journey of kind of one could say, I guess, becoming a poet is a lot of, you know, you really do describe yourself as a documenter of just life around you. Like you even saying that you were just going into such detail, almost like a somewhat like neuroticism of just details of people's lives that caused you insomnia. What do you think? Where did that come from? What do you think that really kind of was inside of you that just wanted to write a detailed script and narration of everything your eyeballs were seeing, even as a young, like as a kid?
I, ooh, you're good. You're good. I, yeah, it was around that time that uh, I realized that I was suffering from depression. I started going to therapy. Uh, Things were changing around that time, and I became a little bit more quiet, more reserved with people, with peers at school, with family. Um, and I don't know, at least with me, I'm not going to be prescriptive, but like you stop talking for a
Mhm.
good month and you start seeing a lot of things going on. You start to notice. I became very observant around that time. Um, but I still needed something to say. I didn't trust myself to speak out verbally.
Mm.
But I think we all have an inherent need to be seen, be heard. Um, so while my mouth didn't want to talk, um, I let my pen do the talking. Um,
Mm.
and it's you're a teenager, you're in high school. There's a lot of changes going on. Things are becoming very, very different, and
Yeah.
a lot of new things on the horizon that you have to worry about. You're starting to really think about careers in college. Yeah, I wanted to document that. I wanted to catch everything and process it. Poetry allowed me to really take these things in, um, think about my experiences more thoroughly, and
Mm.
come to some conclusions about what kind of person am I now? What kind of person do I want to be? Uh, what is this world that I'm in? Why does society work this way? Um, yeah, I needed it for my well being.
Absolutely, absolutely. It tell me, and thank you for sharing that. That takes a lot, definitely, to share that perspective and that experience. So we really do appreciate you sharing that with us. Tell me a little bit about how, kind of moving gears a little bit, how does that area of South Bronx, how, as a poet from Harlem, South Bronx, what does that mean to your writing? I know, like, as we talked about um, before we started the show, the New York City is like it's unlike, I think, any other place in the world. I think the Bronx, right, Harlem, they're such staples, but they're so unique in terms of it's just fertile ground for so much has happened, so much
Mhm.
history, so many feet have walked there on that ground, so much history, right? So much movement, action, pain, joy, beauty, right? So much has happened on those in just that area, right? How do you feel that the area, your environment of Harlem, South Bronx, has that really influenced and shaped who you are as a writer? Or is that kind of just another chapter in the whole, sphere of who Miguel is, just one of the
Mhm.
many layers of who you are? Or has that really shaped who you are as a writer?
Yeah, no, the city is fused to me. Like, you if you're born and raised here, this is basically who you are.
Wow. Wow.
It doesn't matter where I've gone. Those instincts are always there. Um, but yeah, like thinking about my neighborhoods, my stomping grounds. Historically speaking, as you say, like Harlem Renaissance. What Langston Hughes crossed the same streets I did. Um, Boogie Down Bronx. This is the birthplace of hip hop. Um, it's a storied place. It's a very storied place, and you don't really like recognize that until later, and you like dive deep into the history of your place. Um, as a kid, it was just a place. It was just where I am, the only place I know. But yeah, it's always in my poetry. Like even when I'm gone, I'm writing about New York. Um,
Wow.
and it's kind of it's inseparable because it's like a lot of my poems try to process things that happened when I was young. Places tied to those memories. I feel like I can't have those memories without New York. I will always place my poems somewhere. Um, those feelings, those like occurrences, that childhood, that was in the backdrop of concrete and asphalt and buildings, skyscrapers. Um, Cars are zipping by. The horns are blaring. Crowds of people. It's inseparable. It's always there. Even when I'm writing about California, I feel like New York is there.
Wow, wow, wow. No, that's amazing. And I think I wonder, and I'm not a native New Yorker, but you are. You tell me if I'm wrong or right. That is something just so unique. Well, maybe not unique. I'm sure if we have people from the South, they would say maybe the South always has a special place in their
Mhm.
heart. But yeah, New York is a very, very the city, New York City, very, very special place. No, that's amazing that you said you're bonded, you're fused to it. No, that's absolutely amazing.
For better or for worse, like a famous place, well renowned. People across the world want to come here, but you know, gentrification is always happening. Our mayors are never good. There's constant fear of you know violence and a fear of a potential uptick in crime basically all the time, whether it's happening or not. um it's for better or for worse, for sure. Bittersweet.
Bittersweet for better or for worse. No, that's a good way to put it. Now I wanna now kind of go shift as we kind of move forward now in what has been your career so far. Before we get to being a 2022 Langston Hughes Fellow, Cave Canem Fellow, all these phenomenal works that you've done and accolades, I want to talk about the time you spent at UC Riverside and receiving your MFA in creative writing. I think it's so pertinent, and it intrigues me, being as someone that's lived on both West and East Coast. What was it like, having the experience going to UC Riverside? I went to actually UC Davis myself.
Oh, nice.
I'm very familiar with like the UC system. So I'm
Mhm.
just wondering, how does anyone even from South Bronx, Harlem, how do you hear
Mhm.
about a place like UC Riverside, right? How do you hear about what made you kind of traverse all the way to the other side of the country to really pursue and continue your education with writing? And what is the difference you see West versus East Coast in terms of
Mhm.
just the environment as a poet? What was just some things you took note of?
Yeah, so I actually got my bachelor's degree in psychology. And initially I wanted to be a therapist. Like I wanted to specialize in like helping kids and teens overcome like
Mm,
neurodivergence. I wanted to be support for people that dealt with things that I dealt with when I was younger. Um, but at some point, it must have been like early senior year, I realized like this is not necessarily for me. Um,
mm,
and so I was looking for something to commit to career wise
yeah.
that I would not get bored with, that I know that like my interest will never waver. And the only thing that I can come up with is poetry.
Mm,
So once I graduated, I applied to MFA programs, including UC Riverside. And I was lucky to uh, get an admission for UCR. And I was excited. I was always interested in moving west. I was always interested in living outside of the state. Um, and at that point in my life, this is like 2018. The stress of the city was getting to me. Um, I was starting to get tired of like walking in crowds. I was craving something slower paced, something that would keep my
yeah.
nerves low. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go to Cali. Um, so that's what initially brought me out there, and you know, it it did give me a sense of calm. It gave me what I needed at the time. You know, nice weather, sun all the time. You get that vitamin D. Um, people are generally chiller, less hustle and bustle, a little slower paced. You got the beach nearby, like a nice clean beach nearby to go to. Um, the only issue at the time is you grow up in New York, you don't need a license, you don't need to drive.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that became a problem pretty quickly. I actually just got my license 2 years
Wow.
ago.
That okay, wow, wow, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
first time. So yeah, it's nice. It's slow paced, but I think within 3 years I realized, okay, I'm getting a little bored now.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
need more. I need more action. I need more activity. There are no delis on the corners. Like I need somewhere to go to for food at 1 in the morning, and nothing's open except for McDonald's in California for some reason. Um, I was missing the activity.
Yeah.
So this was a good point in my life to return, and yeah, it's I I feel like this is always going to be the case. I feel like within a few years of being here in New York, I'm going to be like, oh, I miss the slow pace of Cali. Um, and then maybe I'll go back, and then within 3 years, I'll be like, I'm bored here. I'm going to go back to New York. You miss what you don't have.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. That is so fascinating. Man, you needed a chopped cheese at 1 a.m. So you have to
Exactly.
go back to the city, man. Oh my goodness gracious.
That's
At that
right.
deli. No, that's really something to hear though. I hear a lot of that expression from a lot of people. People they love the slow pace of
Mhm.
maybe, let's say in this case, California, especially a place like Riverside. It's so
Right.
nice there. I mean, it's so relaxed.
Hmm.
It's literally a 180 of New York City. I mean, you wouldn't even be able to
Hmm.
compare the two even on a similar day. I mean, it's really complete opposites of each other. So it's kind of
Yeah.
interesting to hear you say you eventually wanted to go back to the hustle and bustle and rancor
Hmm.
that is the city. I'm curious too, then, your time there, just even as a writer, how did you see your writing change, or did it change when you lived in California? Such a different pace, slower paced environment. Did you see a difference in your poetry, your thinking, the schematic of the design of how you wrote, what you wrote about?
For sure, for sure, and to the extent that just being there affected my work. Like I said before, place is important to me. I need a backdrop for what I'm writing about.
Yeah.
So I remember walking around the campus of UCR, like for the first 2 3 weeks. You should have seen me. I was just like, whoa, whoa, because it's just like succulents everywhere.
Yeah.
Just like introducing yourself, like familiarizing yourself with the new trees, the new plants.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of a sudden, instead of the rats and the roaches, it's geckos or some other lizards, just like skittering about on your walk. Um, the sunrises and the sunsets were different,
Yeah. Wow.
like brighter. They say that it's air pollution, but it's beautiful. Um, yeah, it just changed. It changed the imagery of my work. Um,
Yeah.
there was less about crowds of people and like losing yourself amongst them and wanting connection, and it was more like it was almost pastoral. Um,
Wow.
or pastoral leaning, that shift from everything around me is a building and a crowd to everything around me are these beautiful plants and the warmth and the quiet.
Yes.
um so yeah, it's really interesting sometimes to like look at two poems like of mine where one is like very clearly New York and one is very clearly like deserty California, Southern California.
Yes. Yeah.
Dramatic difference,
Mm, mm.
like even in tone.
Yeah. Wow. 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 No, that to even kind of, I think, to even notice that change in yourself, I think already is a bit, is completely metaphorical, but also very shows the level of self care that you have for yourself. Because
Mm,
most people probably wouldn't be able to address the fact that they were going through that type of change. Like you said, even seeing like
mm,
the succubus. I mean, just even lizards on the wall.
mm,
Those are things people don't even notice when they go to a different place. But the fact that you're able to kind of recognize and do that kind of internal self reflection, that even just the way how you were seeing things, your writing, something, even those minute details was really all changing because of your environment. That's really
mm,
very amazing to hear. So tell me a little bit about your work, Cave Canem, a
mm.
fellow. That's some huge, huge, huge. You're a huge deal, Miguel.
Yeah.
That's a big, big deal. Tell me a little bit about your time there as a fellow. I hear stories all the time about
Mm,
people that I know that've done that fellowship, and obviously it was some very, very elite company from a lot of
yeah.
amazing folks that have taken that pledge before you. So tell us a little bit about your
Mm.
time as a fellow there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I got the news that I got accepted for my first retreat last year.
Nice.
Um,
Wow.
and I was actually flabbergasted because I graduated from the MFA in 2020. And I had a peer there who was a year ahead of me. Her name is Jasmine Elizabeth Smith. Um, Fantastic, brilliant poet.
Yeah.
And we were the only two black poets there.
Wow. Okay.
And and before she graduated, uh, she was telling me over and over, apply to Cave, please apply to Cave. You have to apply to Cave all the time. Would tell me to do so. She graduates. I start my second year of the MFA, and you know the year becomes 2020, and then suddenly it's a pandemic. So that cave was canceled. I believe the cave after that was also canceled. And so in 2022 they had to bring in the people that were accepted initially for 2020. So they were not accepting applications for that year. So I applied for the 2023 conference, and that was my first time applying, and I was just astounded that I got in. Uh, but I think I was more shocked when I got there
Mm.
how amazing it was. Like genuinely how amazing, like it filled my heart.
Wow.
Like
Wow.
for all the good that the MFA did for me, I learned a lot. I met peers and friends that I'm going to hold on to forever. My work grew, but I think it's always going to be the case for most people. I don't think I've heard anyone disagree with this idea. The MFA is never what you expect it to be. Um, you imagine something a little, I don't know, idyllic. You imagine some sort of like artistic heaven, the MFA, but it's not exactly that. Um, Speaking for myself, Kaveh was exactly that. Um, like all of those poets were gifted and kind and sweet, and they hold you tenderly. Um, I have social anxiety, and that dissipated in a day.
Wow.
I was talking to everybody, and everybody was talking to me. Um, I wasn't nervous anymore. I wasn't scared to share my stuff. I wasn't scared to talk about anything. Beautiful, beautiful. Last year was one of the greatest weeks of my life.
Wow.
I went again this past summer. Again, one of the greatest weeks of my life.
Wow. Wow. No, those are such heavy but also beautiful words. I feel like in most of those, in situations like that, where you're with like the elite of the elite, the top of your class, that you're, those are the top people in your sport, right? In your
Mhm.
arena, in your craft, in your art. I think usually people, they find themselves with that intense imposter syndrome,
Oh yeah.
where it's like, dang, everyone, I thought I was talented. I get everyone else is talented. People
Mhm.
also can walk and chew gum at the same time. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? People are just as good or even not even better, right? And it must have been such a great feeling. Like you said, it was an environment that was everyone's gifts were just flowing with each other like a circle, right? Like you said, you felt full. I mean,
Mhm.
that must have been, I mean, yeah, you said greatest week of your life. I mean, what do you think it fostered that type of environment at Cave Canem as opposed to, that intense imposter syndrome, people that are so great when people gather together in those types of environments, it tends to be a little off. People do feel that anxiety. What made this so different, you think?
I mean, a number of things I can name, and I'm sure it's a lot more that I wouldn't even be able to like put my finger on. But um, I feel like everyone there is just grateful to be there.
Mm,
And like there with a sense of humility, not trying to perform or outperform. We're all there on a mission. We want our work to get better. Um, and we want company. We want people to be able to hear us and accept us. And I think it's just a space where a number of the walls are torn down. Um, every cave begins with the opening circle, the
mm,
night that everyone arrives, and it's awe-inspiring and terrifying and sad. Everyone sits in a circle and goes around the room answering the question, "Why are you here?" However, you interpret that question. And people have stories, people have experiences, people have things that they've dealt with, you know, just a few years, a few months, a few days prior to this moment. And they have stories to tell. They have things that they've dealt with. They've lost people. Um, they've lost jobs. Um, they've lost time.
yeah.
Uh, it becomes very honest and very thorough and very um, beautiful, just how vulnerable everyone gets from the jump. That's the beginning of the week. Everyone just basically confessing um, to what they've gone through.
Mm,
And I think that tears down the walls sufficiently for you to, you know, understand these are not complete strangers to you anymore. For the rest of the week, you know what they've been through, or at least a fraction of what they've been through, and you can hold them, and they can hold you, having shared your own vulnerability, and that makes sharing the poems easier within your group or at the readings or just hanging out, uh, having lunch together to share a poem that you wrote. It's a nice time. The vulnerability allows us to be more open and receptive people and giving people.
mm. Now I know we had started off this interview. We had talked about I had read all of your amazing accolades, and I remember you had said you're still fledgling with your success.
Mm.
Tell me where are you at in this day, like now? I know you had used the word fledgling, but where do you feel like you truly are now? I mean, are you happy with where you are as you've developed as a poet, as a writer, all these again distinguished achievements that you've been able to surmount, to get to, or do you feel like you're at a point now where you feel comfortable, where you feel like, hey, I am a poet and I know it, I know this, I am a writer. Or do you still feel like there's aspects of you where you have not gone to that quote unquote mountaintop? How much do you feel like you still are climbing on your journey?
Um, well, I feel like I've done a good amount of work fighting off the imposter syndrome. It's still there. It still comes up from time to time. Um, I think I was lucky enough that I was able to shake off the question of am I really a poet back in high school.
Mm.
I know I've known people in their MFAs questioning whether they're a poet. Um, One of the major parts of that fight for me personally is, comparing myself to others. This idea that I wanted a book, two books published before I turned 30. I'm about to turn 30 in a month from today. Um, no book yet, no manuscript yet. And that required accepting that, you know, there's so much time. There's just so much time. I've been working on these poems nonstop, but the manuscript is not ready. I'm going to give it its time. I'm going to keep writing these poems until I feel ready to put them in the right order. And I am confident and happy with what that manuscript is. Um, I read an interview of Eduardo Corral from a few years back when he released Slow Lightning, and I believe it was like he said that it was 8 years post MFA that he worked on that, his first collection of poems. Um, and he was asked about that in the interview, and that was his rationale. Like it needed time,
Yeah.
and I was willing to give it that time. So, I've learned to wrangle with my impatience. Um, it's not a race anymore. It's not about me, you know, uh, getting a book out at the same age as these other people. It's about me getting my book out on my time when I think it's ready.
Mm.
And in the meantime, like I'm still growing my craft, like I'm still developing this work. Um, it's not like this time is being wasted. I'm committed to only getting better. So yeah, patience is key.
Yeah.
The book will be ready when it's ready. In the meantime, I'm just going to keep writing poems.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's such a beautiful thing. And I also think that's honestly, I think you may have just unlocked the key because that is so freeing. I
Mm-hmm.
feel for you to just say, I'm on the time, it's gonna come out when it's ready to come out. I'm not, and like you said, people I think get into this moment in this fear of thinking, I need to do this, I need to do this before this certain age, I need to hit this mark, I need to do this,
Right.
do that. And again, as cliche as it is, we look at everyone's highlight reel. You don't see what people have gone through to maybe where that person did something in a short amount of time, but you didn't see what they had to go through to get, they saw this window that they had, and this is
Mm-hmm.
just when they had finally their time to jump on an opportunity. And it is such a freeing thing when you, like you said, wrangling in patience. Patience really is such a major key of life because, like, I remember I said this to a friend the other day, we can only bend the universe to our will so far, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it's a big old universe with a lot of question marks that we have no control over. You
Exactly.
only can really control what's right in front of you and how you're dealing with things in your own life, choosing to stay, walk away from, continue to be in different situations. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that must be such a freeing feeling to kind of just say, hey, I'm on my time. This is when my book comes out, my first whatever it may be collection, all these things. This is when it's going to come out. How did you kind of reach that center of peace that I think a lot of people don't reach? I think it's very hard to build that mental fortitude of patience, especially in the arts.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's once I really started noticing that my work was getting better.
Mm.
I think that was probably one of the biggest, uh, uh, I guess, drivers towards me being calmer and patient about the speed of my career. Um, Knowing that I am honing my craft and the signs are there, like being able to see that this poem from, this year, I can read that and I can compare it to the one that I wrote 2 years ago, and I much prefer this new one.
Mm.
It's proof that you are on a trajectory. So long as you commit to bettering yourself, bettering your craft, um, making your voice stronger, expanding any aspect of the way that you write. If you're committed to that and you see the progress, you see the growth, those bigger accomplishments will come. That book will put itself together at some point. Um, but the time is being spent well. Um, it also helps having peers. It also helps having friends that are on the same path that you are, trying to put that book together, trying to put their second book together, and being able to commiserate, being able to support each other. That sense of community. There were periods of time where I didn't have it, and that lack was very, very painful. And then there were times where I did have it, and I have a lot of it now. Um, that support system is really, really important.
1000%. Yes, community means so much. Thank you so much, Miguel, for sharing. It's been such an amazing conversation thus far. We really appreciate you opening up your words to us, heart, mind, soul, all those
Mhm.
good things.
My pleasure.
Miguel, we have one last question for you on the Poet Speaks podcast today. Miguel, why do you need to get your words out?
Ooh. I I feel like this is the most that I can give. Um, Poetry is the activity that I enjoy the most. I think that it's like that art, that making of a thing, that putting those words together, making them right, or as close to right as possible. That's my favorite kind of toiling. That's my favorite way to spend a few hours, to spend a few days, to spend a few months. Um, and there are stories to be told. It's not just mine. My story includes my sister's story, my parents' stories, my grandparents' stories. Um, I don't know anybody else in my family that told these stories. Um, I have peers that are telling stories, of different parts of the city, different neighborhoods or something, different states, different countries. I think these stories, the stories of my neighbors, the stories of like the working class people of color in the Bronx, um, they need to be told. They need to be told. Um, you know, they can people can try to like obscure certain histories, but like so long as somebody is telling these stories, those people will never be gone. There is an immortalization. So it is a sense of responsibility. Um, if you're willing to give your words to explain the hardships that people go through for living where you live, for being the color that you are, for being queer, it's all worth it. It's all worth it. It's it's my biggest drive. I have to. I just have to.
Nice, nice. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Miguel. And thank you for sharing all of your amazing words, everyone. That's why Miguel needs to get his words out. All right. And now, Miguel, tell us, what is the rest of 2024 looking for you right now? Obviously, we're entering the last quarter of 2024. So what is the rest of the year looking like for you? Any events? And tell us, where can folks check out all of your amazing and beautiful work? Any websites, social media links? Tell the folks out there.
Yeah, for sure. I this Thursday I'm actually going to be at a reading. It's like the Exquisites series. You can follow them at Exquisites BK on Instagram. It's 5 queer poets, 12 minutes each, at the Aberdeen Community Garden in Brooklyn. It's also going to be streamed. There is going to be a Zoom, so you can follow them for information there. I'm looking forward to a few poems that are going to come out of mine on in the Colorado Review, and 3 other poems in narrative. They were named the finalist of or a finalist for their 16th annual poetry contest. So I'm excited for those 6 poems to come out later this year, and I'm just gonna keep writing, keep exploring my city, finding open mics. Yeah.
Absolutely. Where can we find your stuff? Any links, websites, socials?
Yeah.
Check out.
I'm MMP Poetry on Instagram.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Check all of Miguel's links will be down below in the detail box section, no matter what platform you listen to this amazing podcast on. Again, a big thank you. Thank you so much, Miguel, for joining us today on the Poet Speaks podcast. Thank
you so much, Amanda. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And again, everyone go check out all of Miguel's amazing works. His links will be down below in the description box, right where you listen to this podcast. Everyone, this is the Poet Speaks podcast. Like I said, the #1 poetry podcast in the world. Everyone, all right. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.